So I don't know what it's like in South Carolina, but it is this week today. It is like a high of 95 with like 100% humidity, and
Yeah,
it
we are
is,
breaking records today. We got in the feels like in the hundreds
yeah,
today.
our feels like temperatures in the I mean, it's just awful in the Midwest right now. And like the next week, there's like no
Yeah.
end in sight, and it's just that time of the year, right? Like we're in that time of the year, and then Tyreek Hill, he had a quote that went viral today, and I'm like, and I wanted to get angry about it, and then I had to stop and remind myself and say, Goose Fraba, anger management. We're in that time of the year, right? We're in that time of the year where it's mini camps. Players, new team guys are saying things in showing support, and I just had to remind myself that Tyreek Hill is lying. Tyreek Hill is only saying is only thing they could take from Tyreek Hill's quotes right now is he's trying to be a good teammate. He was
Yeah, he's
either
trying to pump
asked
his
on a
guy up.
podcast or he said on a podcast unprovoked. As far as accuracy goes, he'd go Tua over Mahomes, and that's like the one thing he can say, right? He can't say that the Mahomes is the Tua is a better deep ball thrower. He can't say that
Off
Tua is more
script.
explosive off script. He could maybe say that Tua is a better leader, but that's a direct shot at Pat, and I don't think Tyreek would do that. And I don't think that Tua is a better leader. So he went with the one thing that you could maybe make the argument for. I disagree. I think that Patrick Mahomes is probably way more accurate than Tua, but Tua is more accurate, and I love accuracy.
Well, look, and not to pretend like I know more than an NFL player, but I don't think he quite knows yet until you get in games and figure this out.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, like he's throwing practices to you, or footballs to you in practice right now. We're not even in training camp yet.
Yeah.
Like let's chill for a second.
In-game accuracy. Let's get to in-game accuracy. And and I will say again, smart on Tyreek Hill's point. Again, don't get angry about it when you hear the quote, when you see the quote. We're here to remind you, don't get angry. He's all the Tyreek Hill's trying to prove. There's no even point to argue it. He's just trying to prove he's being a good teammate. And good for him being a good teammate. And you know what? That's what good teammates do. They find the one thing they can say and that could maybe be argued, and he doesn't have to really back it up. He can just say it. It's not a shot at Mahomes. And if someone were to say, is that a shot at Mahomes? Like, no. Mahomes is really accurate. Just Tua is like the most accurate. Like, it's just the only thing you could say. But it is funny. It just reminded me, we're in the season now where I haven't been outside in 8 hours and I have no desire to go outside. And then we're in the season for the NFL where it's like the new guys in the camps with their new teams are going to say things. AJ Brown, I think, had a quote about a Titans fan chirped at him. He was like, "I'm the best wide receiver that franchise ever had. So I don't know why he's getting angry at me." Like, it's just that time where the new guys in camp are chirping their old teams, pumping up their new teammates, and all while trying to show that they deserve the contract they got.
Sure, and it's a funny segue into the show that we have today, which is focusing on quarterbacks with the most pressure, and then maybe some teams with those quarterbacks as well as a whole. What kind of pressure they find themselves under? Tua certainly hopes that Tyreek Hill's pumping him up will translate to on the field this season. And by the way, Devontae Adams was also doing some of that himself by comparing Derek Carr to Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
But he's like,
too.
They're very similar guys in that respect. It's like, dude, I love Derek Carr, right? I think he's grossly underrated. But let's pump the brakes a little bit.
I do feel like, though, it's again another fair thing for Adams to say in the sense of they're close, basically, and if you wanted to make the argument.
I think he's trying to tip the scales because he's like, no one's giving this guy credit.
And if you wanted to make the argument that there's one quarterback in the league who is like, how this is it. This is the example. Follow me here. Chris Middleton of the Milwaukee Bucks is the B version of Kevin Durant. Derek Carr, you could argue, is kind of like the B version of Aaron Rodgers. He turns the ball over too much. But if he turned the ball over less, he'd be like the B+ version of Aaron Rodgers.
I can kind of see where you're going with that.
They're
a similar type of player.
Yes.
They're a similar type of player. They, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers is way more mobile than I think he gets credit for throughout his career. But he's not a guy that's like killing you with his legs. Derek Carr's the same way with that. They both have like really good deep balls. They're both pretty much on the money with their throw. They have quick releases. So a lot of that, I'd say from a leadership aspect, you'd probably almost put more in the basket of Derek Carr in that regard, because it does seem like he's done a lot more with a lot less. Although obviously the playoff wins and the championships aren't there for him. But given what he's had to work with and the dysfunction of that whole organization as a whole, got to give him props for that, for sure. But before we get into today's main topic, which is us going through our list of some quarterbacks that are facing the most pressure, we talked about it before. Mark and I have a few guys that we think is just no-brainer, under a lot of pressure, mainly pressure for their jobs. But there are some other guys that I think are under pressure for different reasons, whether or not it be getting to that next contract, whether it be fulfilling a contract, or just their legacy in general. So I think this will be an interesting conversation to have. But right as we did our last show, Mark, we filmed it early. And then the next day that we normally would have filmed, the big news dropped that Aaron Donald was getting a huge extension. Of course, there had been all of these question marks surrounding whether or not he was going to come back, because, he had been flirting with retirement over the past couple years. But he gets his big-time extension, $95 million across 3 seasons. So he, after T.J. Watt got a record-breaking deal, is now the highest-paid per year average defensive player in league history, over $20 million per year, or $30 million per year, excuse me. T.J. Watt making $28 million. And then after that was announced, Cooper Kupp, it wasn't long after that he got his big deal as well.
Money.
A 3-year extension. $80 million, 75 of it guaranteed. And in total, it's about $110 million for Cooper Kupp with this 3-year extension. So the Rams just keep finding ways to sign guys to big money deals. And, here they are winning Super Bowls and, going into the season as probably the favorite and with clearly the best roster yet again. It's just how the Rams do business. And I think they are paving the way for the new era of how caps are manipulated and how you maneuver a lot of these issues that some teams have yet to figure out.
Certainly they're setting a standard in that way for other teams to look at as a blueprint. But I will argue that the Rams they only have 2 or 3 other teams that could feasibly copy this to the level of success that they have to. And I say that because they're in LA. I think part of what the Rams, I had a person here who I work with who's a huge Chiefs fan. I live in the Illinois-Missouri border in this Chiefs country. And so he takes a lot of offense to like anything that like, he used to be a St. Louis Rams fan, but he's very anti the Rams now. And anytime the Raiders do anything, he's like, the Raiders are the stupidest thing of all time. And I had to defend the Raiders a lot too much. It's hard to do sometimes. The point I'm trying to make is that he was arguing, he's like, oh, it's so ridiculous. It's so stupid. And they're going to be disaster in 2 years from now. And my whole thing is, I'd argue, I'm like, first off, who cares what 2 years from now looks like when you have Matthew Stafford at the very end of his prime, Aaron Donald at the very end of his prime, maybe his career, and then you have weapons around these guys that are all in their prime: Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Jalen Ramsey, Bobby Wagner, end of his prime. But you know what I mean? You have this window now that it's like, no. Your window's to win now. You Super Bowls in the NFL, anything beyond 2 years is way too far to think about. It's so been proven.
Yeah, even at the quarterback position now, which it used to be, you think 4 years down the road. Now you got to think one to two.
Go back most. 5 years ago. You think, oh, it's just 5 years. 5 years ago, if you would have done the whole like, which quarterback would you like to have for the next 10 years? Jameis Winston would have been in the top 10 People 5 years ago, he would have been a second year in the league. He had a really good rookie season. And now you think Jameis Winston, we just did it with the quarterback list. He's bottom, 30-ish, he's like 20 to 30. And like we both said, needs a huge year to kind of like earn his spot to stay in the NFL as a starter. So don't give me this whole, you're screwing yourself for 3 years down the road. That has been proven to be like, who gives a rip? And then again, what I'm saying about LA is that the Chargers have the possibility to compete the way the Rams do. And I would argue the only other team that could really do that model would be the Dolphins. And because it's Miami, that is comparable to LA as far as glitz, glamour, star power. Most NFL guys either have a place there already or want to get a place there, LA, Miami. And what I'm saying is that the Rams know they are always going to be in competition and a leader on the, as far as in the clubhouse, a leader in the clubhouse for guys like Odell Beckham Jr., who are, and Von Miller, who can give you a season and are trying to resurrect their career and will play for the veteran minimum. So if you're even competitive, you can sign the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, the Von Millers, those type of players for league minimums or very low, non-guaranteed money. Just boom, come on in and perform with us for a year. You already got a place in LA and run with us as we just go on runs. Like that is the Rams are building that model where you have your 4 or 5 core pieces that you pay top of the line for. And let it, mind you, not like the Cowboys where they pay top of the line in all those positions too, but those guys aren't actually at the top of the line. You're talking about Matt Stafford, who I'd argue is top. You could argue top 5, but definitely top 7 quarterback in the league. Aaron Donald, who's one of the top greatest defensive players ever, who's still elite at his position, top 2 or 3 defensive players in the league. Jalen Ramsey, top 10 in the league in defense and top 5 in his position. So you're paying guys, Cooper Kupp, top 5 in the league at his position. So you're paying top of the line dollars for actual top of the line guys, giving you actual top of the line production. And then you can fill in the blanks with veterans who are on Hall of Fame trajectories, who are trying to find a place for the twilight of their careers or to resurrect their career. Hell, you already got a house in LA. Come on out here, play with us for a season.
Yeah, I mean, LA is the biggest draw that there is. There's no question about it. It's a big reason why LeBron ended up going there at the end of his career. It wasn't just because it was the Lakers and he wanted to take it upon himself to resurrect the Lakers brand. No, it's everything's there. His net worth has doubled since he's been out there as a Laker. Like, there's obvious reasons for a lot of this. Media companies, exposure to things like that. You obviously have the celebrity lifestyle that a lot of these athletes want to live. Hard to do that in Cleveland. No offense to Cleveland there.
Yeah.
Or offense. I don't know. Either way.
Offense to Cleveland.
Offense. And, to piggyback off of your point there a little bit, so there's been a lot of talk about, how does this happen? How is this even possible? It is pretty simple, actually. And what it is the voidable years. A lot of teams now, what they're doing is the signing bonus, which is always guaranteed. That's where the big money tends to come from in terms of the guarantees. The signing bonus is heavily weighted, and it's right now. But what they can do is prorate that signing bonus over several years. It's like credit card debt that doesn't accrue interest. And the best part about it for these teams, it's not just kicking the can down the road, although it certainly is. They're going to pay for this later, and it's going to count against their cap in 2024, 2025.
But it'll be smaller increments.
It'll be smaller increments, and the cap is larger in those years. It's increasing every year. So they're going, by that time, the money that they owe is actually less in terms of the percentage of what it would be today.
Yep.
So it is a smarter way of doing business, because at the end of the day, what you're owing then is going to be worth less, and you're going to have more money. So it really is a net positive a lot of times for these teams. The problem is you can get carried away with that and then find yourself owing $100 million in 2025 for players that aren't there. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. But it's a smart move.
You don't want that to happen. And again, it takes an owner who's willing to write the check, because again, when you sign that deal, Aaron Donald got paid, guaranteed $60 million over 2 years. That clears his bank account, boom, instantly. That is Stan Kroenke writing the check for the Rams organization. You know what I mean? Like, that is the Rams bankrolling it. So if you're an organization like a Jacksonville or, you know what I mean, one of these other, organizations that may be struggling. Now, Shad Khan's a billionaire, but, and so he may take some of his own money. But again, you got to front that for your organization. So that's why the Bears don't do it. The McCaskey family is only rich. Their only wealth is what the Bears have in flexible money and spending. So you take certain organizations to be able to do that. And it just goes to show you, now maybe with the Broncos and the Walton family getting involved, maybe they're going to be an organization who's going to be able to really do that and play that type of game. You got to get these big money people to be able to spend the money that way and to be confident in spending the money that way. Stan Kroenke is certainly one of them. And he sees the dividends of winning too. I think so many of these owners, and I think the Bengals may, who knows, Paul Brown is notorious one of the cheapest owners, but the Bengals, again, you see the dividends of winning and you see how much money you bring in from a Super Bowl run. And you think to yourself, crap, that's kind of addicting. I want to do that again. I'll spend that money to make that money again. So it's a great point by you about the credit card debt that doesn't have interest. And as the cap explodes, but you do have to have an organization that has the money that's willing to write. Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, that the Rams wrote, almost $100 million in checks. They're just gone, the bank account, and that's a lot of money, even though I know it's the NFL and they all make a lot of money, but that's a lot of money.
It's still, yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of money, and they paid Bobby Wagner earlier. They paid Allen Robinson. They might very well pay Odell. We'll see. He's still on the free agent market.
Yeah, crashing Sean McVay's wedding.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So he's likely to stay, is my guess, but we'll see when that time comes. I got to give this guy a shout out, although it's certainly not as big of a payday as the rest of these guys that we've talked about, but he is a South Carolina native, went to Clemson. Hunter Renfrow getting a $32 million 2-year extension with the Las Vegas Raiders after a really big season, a breakout year for him. Establishing himself as one of the better route runners in the NFL, and he has dominated in the slot and, solid deal. It's $20 million of it guaranteed. That's a huge payday for some of these guys, especially a guy that 2 years ago you wouldn't have thought would ever, get to double-digit million-dollar figures like this, but he has found a niche for himself, and you can't help but root for guys like that.
It's a steal, honestly, for the Raiders too. I really believe that. I mean, he is so uber productive. He is Julian Edelman. He is Wes Welker. That is Josh McDaniels. Remember, new head coach of the Raiders. You need that guy in your offense, and with Davante Adams there, I mean, it has a Randy Moss, Wes Welker type of feel. I think they're going to see some of that type of, offense. I mean, Davante Adams commands respect and he commands double teams, and Hunter Renfrow already is annoying. He was uber productive even after they lost Ruggs in this, in the second half of that season. And so a guy who already is just the middle of the football field has changed so much for defense in the NFL when they've taken out these big hits and what you can and can't do to wide receivers and defenseless receivers. And so he is the type of guy that takes advantage of those rule changes. He's the type of guy that with Davante Adams becomes even more valuable, doesn't miss time. I mean, I think it's a steal for the Raiders. I think it's huge. I really, really do. And again, you lock him up for whatever kind of run you're on here now. You know what I mean? It's a 2-year deal. You don't want to give a guy like that 4 years because he's going to take a lot of hits and you don't want that money to be dead. That's when it sucks. We talk about with the cap, when you have money invested in a guy that then is not available. If
it doesn't pan out, then it's really rough.
If a guy retires or whatever happens, you could trade him for, trade the contract, move some things around. But if it's just, he's just unavailable. That's when those big money contracts are the worst of the worst. They hurt. They just hurt. So I think Renfrow, I don't think it's overpaying. I don't think it's too much money. And I think it's a steal.
Yeah. Clutch performer, third down guy, no question. Caught the national championship winning pass from Deshaun Watson at Clemson. And then now he finds himself hauling in a big payday himself. So good for him. Good for Hunter Renfrow.
You brought up his name. I'll quickly say it again. We talked about it before. Deshaun Watson, man, I stand by it. We don't need to talk about the more stuff because again, it's all coming out, more of it. I stand by my proposed to the NFL, suspend him until the trials are done.
Yeah, they have to.
It's such a nightmare. It's a PR night. Again, you have so many people still like, what happened to innocent till proven guilty? And blah, blah. It's like, again, the NFL's a private organization. They got to protect the shield. Protect the shield, NFL. Suspend him until this ordeal is done. Let him go through all the trials. But already you're having Kevin Stefanski having to answer questions. You saw that? He said, oh, well, I'm just going to let the due process play out. You're going to deal with this all season unless you suspend him, because these trials are going to be long, going to be arduous, and a ton of this type of information is going to come out.
No question. It's bad news Bears, bad news Browns, big time. And now they're stuck in that situation. You already burned the Baker Bridge. You're in deep. And that's why when it first happened, man, I talked about just how incredibly risky this was.
Yeah.
And they are now, they're now swimming in it, and we don't even know yet. And it already seems like it's already been a terrible choice. It's like we already feel validated in an opinion that was formed a month ago before the season even started.
It's crazy. If and when he gets suspended, the bridge is burned so bad with Baker. I've been trying to think about what the Browns could do. I honestly think one of the things you look at doing is you call the Saints and you say Baker for Jameis, just swap. You get Baker, he'll fit in exactly what you're trying to do. He's almost Drew Brees-esque in the way you can run your offense and all that. You give us Jameis on a 1-year, deal just because Jameis can maybe optimize.
Yeah, I
think they're about equal. I think Baker's.
I'd rather have Baker. I think, but
I agree.
You can't. If you're Cleveland, you can't have him anymore.
You can't have Baker. Exactly. So I just feel like that's the only thing I could think of. And so I know we're not talking about that now, but
I don't hate that. I think that's. I kind of like that.
I think New Orleans would consider it. I think New Orleans would consider it. Just a straight up swap. And if Cleveland eats some of the Baker money,
Atlanta might too. For a swap with Mariota, maybe.
Yeah, but I think if you're
not saying
it's Cleveland, I think I personally, Jameis, gives you a better win, I think, than Mariota.
Definitely. All right, let's get into our list here, Mark, of who's under the most pressure going into the 2022 season. Every year, there's tons of pressure on all of these athletes, especially at the quarterback position. But this year in particular, we're going to have a new crop. And, I'm interested to see kind of who you have on your list. And I have one as well. We both talked. We have a few guys that are really under pressure. So it's kind of a tiered system. Kind of how I did it myself was guys under pressure for different reasons. And to me, the biggest reason would be playing for your career, playing for your job. Yeah. So those are the guys under the most pressure in my mind. And then I go down the list for some other reasons as well. But we'll start with you if you want to give your first one. However you want to do this.
The pick is in the draft for the quarterbacks under the most pressure. I'm going with Ryan Tannehill. I think he deserves to be the number 1 overall pick in this pressure draft because Tannehill is still, I think, in that year or two left of his career where it's like, I think you can still get the most out of yourself physically. You know what I mean? Like, he's not Matt Ryan, where it's kind of obvious that his peak days are past. Ryan Tannehill, whatever Ryan Tannehill's peak is, has been since he's been with the Titans. And I feel like this is also the type of situation where if Ryan Tannehill is bad, I don't think many people are going to be like, oh, he deserves another shot somewhere. I don't think there's a lot of people who are going to be fighting for Ryan Tannehill. You know what I mean? To get another chance. I think Ryan Tannehill will have a job next year, no matter where it is. I think he's one of those guys that immediately comes in to compete, to fill spot starter, the best of the best for mentoring maybe a young quarterback or starting while you have a young quarterback. But if he plays really, really well, this is his job again going into next year. And he would be again the top of this list next year. But that's the kind of spot that Ryan Tannehill's in. So a really good season for Ryan Tannehill can lock him into the Titans again for that final year of his contract. And that takes a little bit of the pressure off then going into the rest of your career. But I think Tannehill this year, ton of pressure. That team is built to win now. The AFC's got a ton of competition. And Malik Willis is the guy that all the draft experts kept saying would go first round, and they all were wrong. So I think a lot of those people are, we're all trying to figure out what is Malik Willis. And we haven't yet heard anything out of camp yet, but, Ryan Tannehill, the pressure is on even more because that guy's in the building.
That's interesting. I honestly didn't think to put Ryan Tannehill on this list, but I think you've convinced me that he belongs on this list. Certainly.
Here we go.
I don't know if it's the top spot that I would put him in, but yeah, I mean, it's a good point. He is towards that back end of his career. The only thing that I would think about in that is that you never had these lofty expectations out of Ryan Tannehill.
Valid.
And so I think that he's already kind of exceeded. Now I'm sure, that wouldn't be a solace to him. He wants to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback and, he'd love to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, things like that. And I get it. But so there's that aspect to it. But in terms of playing for his job next year, I think you're right. I mean, it's if it doesn't go well, then you throw Malik Willis out there, some guy you still invested in and you're hopeful for. So
his career quickly goes from in a calendar year, it can go from he's still the starter of the Titans going into next year with the same amount of pressure, or he is now just a guy like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or any of those guys who's like, all right, bring him in. We got a young guy. Let's bring him into camp and see what, we can do with him. And maybe he wins the job, or maybe he is just a good voice in the locker room. So I think that is a huge change in your career. So that to me was the biggest part of the pressure for it.
Number one for me was Tua.
He's all right. He's number two for me.
I just, I know it's very young in his career, but it's already been it's been a rocky road already. And the injuries have been concerning. And that was one of the big concerns coming into his career was whether or not he was going to be able to stay available with this team. Part of the reason that there's all this pressure is everything that's been invested in this team to make him better. And the Jalen Waddle pick last year going into year two already we think is, a pretty phenomenal wide receiver.
Yeah.
Then they add Tyreek Hill. Then they add 4 running backs. Clearly are going to shore up this offensive line, this ground game with a lot of veteran backs like that. They're going to put him in a position to succeed. They want to get Mike McDaniel, a guy who was part of the Kyle Shanahan offense and, his right-hand man. There's a lot of expectations out of this offense, and all of
Absolutely.
that, if not, 90%, falls on Tua. And his career is one where it's not like maybe some other guys, like a Carson Wentz or a Sam Darnold, who their size is so attractive and their intangibles are so attractive that they're awarded 3-4 chances potentially. Tua's a guy where, like, man, if it doesn't work out with your first team, that could be the end of the road potentially, depending on how this plays out. This is a big season for Tua, and the division is as gettable as it's ever been outside of Buffalo being great. There is a chance here, like Miami, he needs to get this team to the playoffs and play well. And, maybe he dominates and they don't get there, and then you're like, okay, but there has to be success. And, a good portion of that comes from just Tua and his play.
I agree. The only reason I put Tannehill above Tua, and I think we're kind of, it just goes to show how our brains think we're the opposite. To me, I'm feeling like, the pressure because Tannehill, it's closer to the end of his career. Where Tua, I do feel as though I agree with everything you just said. Everything you just said. And so for Tua, I do think that Tua will, he's got the 5th-year option. It's really affordable considering what other quarterbacks making in the market. Miami spent a lot of money in free agency. I think Tua has a little bit more of a cushion if the year doesn't go perfectly because of the new coach to have the chance to still be starting with Miami next year because he'll be 4th year. Maybe they won't pick up his 5th-year option or whatever, but he'll have that kind of Baker Mayfield type runway. But I agree. It's a massive year for Tua. He absolutely should be 1 or 2 on this list. And I think that the thing about Tua is when I said, for Tannehill, it's this peak of his career where in a calendar year for Tua, this is his Mitchell Trubisky year. You're absolutely right. He's not Wentz or big enough in that way, or even Darnold to be like, you know what, we're going to take a flyer on this guy to just give him the starting job. He is Mitch, where the sense that it's like, nah, dude, he's going to be just now, if he's good in the locker room, he's just going to be one of the best backups in the league. And that's a desirable thing. Tua, again, like Mitch, I think could have a very long career. Tua could be in the league for 10 years, like a Teddy Bridgewater, like a Mitch Trubisky. I think they is ripe for that type of career, Gardner Minshew type thing. But if he wants to be a starter, to get another contract and actually have a chance to really have a team to win Super Bowls and to build and to be a part of, this year is everything. And this team, it's going to be with Miami. Guys like Tua, you're absolutely right, don't get the real second chance. It's just the way the NFL works. There's too much other talent coming out of the draft every year that's ooh and ah, as opposed to taking a flyer on undersized with physical limitations. So huge pressure year for Tua.
Yeah, so he was number 2 for you. What was your third guy?
My third is Jalen Hurts. And again, I put Jalen Hurts this high because he's got a really good team around him with a young head coach that we both doubted a calendar year ago. Now we were like, Nick Sirianni, I don't know. But now you say this is a team that made the playoffs. The NFC is weaker. There's already storylines of Jalen Hurts, physically looking bigger. He tried to gain weight this offseason, work on his deep ball a little bit more. And I think Jalen Hurts, you got to remember, this is his third year. He's only got a 4-year contract. He was a second-round pick. And I add Jalen Hurts. I give him the bump because he's never got the big payday. First-round picks get that. A guy like Tua, a guy like Mitch, they both met 20-something million guaranteed. Like, Jalen Hurts did not get that. He got a couple million guaranteed, a nice second-round contract. But this is Jalen Hurts' year to show the Philadelphia Eagles that I am your guy. Let's get me to a nice 3-4 year deal, 80 million, guaranteed, and let me be your guy for the next 3 to 4 years. So that's huge pressure, especially because any team that made the playoffs in the NFC last year that misses the playoffs this year is going to be scrutinized, I think, even more so. Because, again, I think we all agree the NFC has taken a step back from this time last year to this time this year. It's not as great of a conference overall, talent-wise. And so now when you lose a Russell Wilson, you lose a Devontae Adams, all these pieces go over to the AFC. I think we all agree the NFC is weaker. So if the Eagles miss the playoffs and Hurts doesn't have improved numbers, he's in danger. I mean, it's a chance to change his life. And again, Jalen Hurts, like Tua, because of the size, and like Mitch, it's the Eagles or bust as far as getting a chance to be the starter and to have your own team for a period of time to win a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts will absolutely have a career in this league, 10-year career if he stays healthy, and make a lot of money in small increments, being a backup, and maybe even have a chance to spot start and, Tyrod Taylor-esque career. Jalen Hurts is very poised for that. But this year is a chance for Jalen Hurts to prove, no. He belongs in that conversation of guys in that top 15 in the league, and you can win with Jalen Hurts if you build the right team around him. So big year for Jalen Hurts.
And to your point, they go and get a big spend on a wide receiver in AJ Brown, and they invested in that position last year. They're also saying, look, this is an offense that should do well and should light up the scoreboard. And so you got a pressure to kind of live up to that. So, yeah, that's an interesting pick. I like it. I did not have him in my top 3. So I will go with my number 2, which is Carson Wentz. And and mainly because I just think this is it. Like this, the other guys we mentioned, Tua and Jalen, I think while we think there's a good probability that they have to do it with their current team, there's not a 0% chance that another team wouldn't take a flyer on them. I'm pretty confident
this is a 0.
The Carson experience and the experiment through 3 teams, if it doesn't pan out in a very weak division, 2 back-to-back weak divisions, really, if it doesn't work out, then if you're another team, like you said, there's so much talent at the position coming out. And by this point, he'd be almost 30. Like, you got to talk about, this is just a guy that maybe we could have come in here as a backup. Is he a guy that could be a backup? That's kind of a tough situation.
Agreed.
Cam Newton doesn't seem like a guy that could fill that role. And Wentz might be in a similar mold as that. He's under a ton of pressure. There's already, he went to a franchise in Washington that's already dealing with its own stuff. So hopefully there's not a dust up over there, pun intended there with Jack Del Rio reference. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting position he finds himself in, and it's not like he's in a terrible situation. Like they have a defense that's pretty solid, and he's got Terry McLaurin. They just, spent another draft pick on a receiver.
Well, Terry's not in camp right now, but yes.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot can happen over the next couple months, but for the purposes of this exercise, we'll assume he's with the team. Carson has to make this work for a team too that won the division just a couple years ago, right? Like, this is a team that, has that opportunity in front of it. And to not be able to get done with the Colts last year with all of the stability and the, great things that went their way and his way in particular, in terms of a great offensive line, great weapons, you come to Washington, which is certainly not a terrible situation. There could be better, certainly in a lot of regards, but you have weapons, you have the capabilities to win there. If it doesn't happen this year, it's no more, unfortunately.
Yeah, Wentz was the next on my list as well. And the only reason I had Wentz not higher is because I think all of us, our expectations for Wentz have just plummeted. So, and I don't think anyone will be sad in a year from now when Carson Wentz is unemployed and debating whether he wants a backup job or not. Because you're absolutely right. Carson Wentz will move into that spot of, you're brought into an organization that is looking for a backup and is looking to maybe vet or mentor to start for 5 games while our rookie sits for 5 games. And that's his future if this year doesn't go well. Carson Wentz, like we said with Tua, and like I said with Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz's only chance to be a quarterback where the team invested in him as the starter for a 2 or 3 year period and invest in him is now with the Washington Commanders. That's it. That's it. It's done. So it is in that regard, it's a huge year for him. I'll just add really quickly with Wentz. You mentioned the Cam thing. I think Wentz is the type of guy, he had that big contract. I think Wentz is the type of guy that would be willing to humble himself in a role to just be a spot starter. But I just don't know if teams will see him that way. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's as valuable. Sure. You know what I mean? If I can go out and
I based that mainly off of some, rumblings that we've gotten, reports about him, him not really having the team rally around him.
Agreed.
And not being the most quote unquote like likable guy.
Yes.
A little bit of a harsh personality in some respects.
And I think that
could be a good thing for that position, but it can also be a bad thing. So
I think that's exactly why I'm building off of that and saying that I just don't think teams will see him that way. And I think
you might be right in
like
that regard.
A Mitch or a Tua, I would much rather bring them in.
They're team guys.
They're team guys. They're all the reports are the locker rooms really like the guys.
Hurts is that way too.
Hurts is that way as well. So he's gonna fall behind a lot of those guys on that list. So it's going to be, again, and that's why the pressure is really on for him. I mean, this is a huge year for Carson Wentz in that way. Last year was a huge year, but this one, it's desperation time.
So does that kind of end the tiers for you, the top tier for you, or did you have one more?
That's the top tier for me. I think I could go in 3 different directions. I have one more guy who I'd say this is a career, like your career's on the line type of year. And I don't know if he's on your list at a different portion, but I'll give it to you now, and you let me know if this was out of left field or you had him somewhere else. Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones is the last guy who I'd say, like, all right, dude, in a year from now, your career could be vastly different in positive and negative. You have the benefit of, it looks like your team's getting healthy and you have a new head coach that a lot of people are excited about in Brian Daboll, right? And you have the job. They didn't draft anyone. They didn't bring in a veteran of note. It's your job. You know, a lot of people had Baker in New York and all these other things. No, your job. And so Daniel Jones is the type of guy that has shown those flashes, but is just not healthy enough, not consistent enough. But a lot of people argue the organization around him was terrible. You know what I mean? It was just, bad coaching, a bad organization. So Daniel Jones is the final person for me. Like, in a year from now, this dude's career could look so different. If he's out of the league and can't even get a backup job, I don't think anyone would bat an eyelash. Be like, all right, the league moved on. No, neither of us could be like, Daniel Jones should be in the league. We're gonna stump. I'm gonna go out and campaign for Daniel Jones. But if Daniel Jones is starting again for New York and they pick up his, just give him his fourth year or don't pick up his fifth or pick up his fifth year option, whatever they do, because he comes out and throws 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Saquon Barkley rushes for almost 1,000 yards, and the Giants kind of surprise people and finish near 500. I don't think anyone would bat an eyelash at the Giants going, all right, maybe Brian Daboll can make something out of Daniel Jones, and you just pick up the option because it's way cheaper, and depending on where they fall in the draft or what's available, and you say, all right, Daniel Jones, you have another year. Or it could go really south quickly, and he's not starting by middle of the year, and Daniel Jones's career in the NFL is now, Josh Rosen-esque of, like, can he find a job? And that's
sure.
That's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. So
I think there's some pressure on Daniel Jones. I just don't think that there's a lot. And the reason I say that is because, unlike some of these other guys, I don't see the overwhelming investment in, you got to be better because look at what we did.
Agreed.
It's more like, what did you do? You got Brian Daboll, which is great. That's a huge, that's obvious. It's a very big piece to, like, the puzzle. But in terms of Daniel Jones, it's like, all right, well, a new head coach, that's an expected lengthy time of development. You're not expecting an overnight thing to change, whereas an A.J. Brown signing is expected week one. Your offense is going to look different. This is going to be a different dynamic. Saquon hasn't been able to stay healthy. He hasn't had the supporting cast. He's a guy I just don't know how to feel about him at all. And that could play into your point as well, that where it's like, maybe other teams are going to see that too and be like, well, we're not sold on the guy, so why would we, make a push for him either? So,
I just feel like Daniel Jones has a chance that's why, and I also think that's why he's not high on this list for me, but he's on this list of saying, like, internally for him, it's pressure. No one's putting the pressure on him.
Yeah.
But it's like, if he goes out and throws, like, again, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, they finish near 500. And, he's seen him run the ball. Like, he's athletic in that sense, straight line speed. Like, man, all right. Daniel Jones had a really quietly, like, a decent year. Like, holy crap, it kind of came out of nowhere. He, though, is in a spot that's like Tua. He's just not as big of a name as Tua, and the investment around Tua was bigger. But he's in a similar spot as Tua in the sense that not only were they're the same draft class, right? But also, I
think Tua was a year after him.
Year after. So Daniel Jones is in year 4. But so I guess what I'm trying to say is that they both have the new head coaches. The new head coaches have stability. The quarterbacks don't. But you know what I mean? The quarterbacks have a chance. They have a chance to kind of latch on. And if the coach believes in them and shows it, then maybe the coach could vouch for them and they could stick around. So they're in a similar situation in that way.
Yeah, so there was 2019 draft was Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, and Dwayne Haskins were the
that's
top
right.
3. So then the next year was Tua. Those are good points, and I can definitely see that. There's also just the fact that playing quarterback for the New York Giants has some pressure baked into that role in and of itself. So that's for sure. For me, it was a duo of Sam Darnold and the Panthers. I think both of them are under an immense amount of pressure because this division is just not good. And they have a good defense. They have like a roster that should compete. Like,
agreed.
You looked at this roster on paper, you would say that's a pretty solid roster, and a lot of these back end teams would probably die to have some of these players. And while this is also a big year for Christian McCaffrey, Matt Rule and company need to be competitive. They can't go another 5-win season. They just can't. They can't go 6-7 win season. They need to get to like 8-9 wins. And I wrote down in my note, we need to see some aspect of progress. Like it just, you have to feel like the needle is moving forward. Didn't feel like that with Sam Darnold outside of those first 3 starts where you're like, oh, somehow maybe they're making this work. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in the first few weeks of the season. Other than that, it was just a disaster. And so Sam is another one of those guys that, yes, he has size and he has attractive traits.
But there's so much now tape built up against him.
Yeah, and it's been very bad. It's not like Wentz was on an MVP trajectory. So he had the traits, plus we've seen him be great. We haven't seen that from Sam yet. So it's really like, this might be the end of the road for you too, man. And so you and the Panthers need each other so bad to do well, because it's really, do or die for both, sides of this thing.
Sam
and Matt Rule,
Sam could end up being like Geno Smith. I don't think Sam's like, when Geno Smith got for the Seahawks this year, everyone's kind of like, oh shit, that's right, he's still in the league. And he had like one game.
And I guess, honestly, I don't think we can discount him being the starter. I know we kind of baked Drew Lock in there, but I think
I think Drew and Geno Smith's dealing with a DUI charge. I think Drew Lock will win that job, but you're right. But I feel like that is that's Sam Darnold. Like Sam, even if he has a great year, I don't see the Panthers sticking with him. The best case scenario for Sam Darnold is he plays really well enough to where a team goes, hey, we're going to put you in the Marcus Mariota situation next year. We'll start you as we drafted a guy in the first 3 rounds, and we'll see what happens, as we're not really trying to win. So he's that's why he didn't make my list, because his career is over. Like, as far as building around Sam Darnold or anything, unless he wins the MVP.
But if he pops off, I mean, look, if they somehow win 10 games with him and make a wild card, it's going to be hard to move off of him, especially when Matt Corral was a, late 3rd round pick.
It would take that. It would take that 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And
I really like this 12 interceptions.
I do. I think that's a fair enough, because it's like you're still like 2 to 1.
0.8 per game.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But because again, it's going to take that, because if it's 30 touchdowns and 20 interceptions, and like that, you just can't. You got to be efficient. Yeah, you got to be efficient. So I'm going to now take it in the direction where it's a different direction. So I have 2 guys on my list where I think the pressure is really huge, and I only have 2 guys left in this way. But it's for different reasons, and neither one of their careers are on the line, but I think it's different reasons. So I'll go first, and I'll go with Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson, there is a lot of pressure. AFC, new team. He kind of got to pick where he wanted to go. They gave up a ton to get him, and you're in now the toughest division of football with 3 quarterbacks who are all very, very good. 3 top 12 quarterbacks 4 quarterbacks on the top 12 in the NFL. 3 of them in the top 5, you really could argue. So he is in absolutely a new pressure pack situation. He's got more pressure on him than Mahomes, because Mahomes has the recent Super Bowl and the recent Super Bowl playoff success, and he's got the long-term deal. He's got more pressure on him than Herbert, because Herbert's still young and can play that card of like, well, the ceiling hasn't been hit yet. And he's got more pressure than Carr, because Carr just got a new deal. So like Carr's got a new deal. He's got a new head coach, and the Raiders as a franchise, bless you, are, I think they're committed to Carr for whatever the next kind of like 2 or 3 year window looks like. I actually don't think there's that much pressure on Derek Carr in general. And I know that may sound crazy, But when you get a new deal and you have a new head coach come in, you're going to get at least 2 years before it's like, if the end of next year, if they haven't made the playoffs again and he's not performing, then it's like, all right, pressure's on. Is it the coach? Is it Carr? What is it? But I think he's got at least a 2-year window. So I think Russell's in a lot of pressure. And I think part of that too is the media. We're all expecting big things. I mean, I know Colin Cowherd's already said he's like the pick for the Super Bowl favorites. People like that. There's people talking about that legitimately. And so it's a lot to live up to. And no one's really talking about the Chiefs and Mahomes. And everyone's talking about Josh Allen and everyone's talking about Russell Wilson. And so I think, and the Broncos. So I think Russell Wilson, there's a lot of just career arc legacy pressure for him.
Yeah. I mean, people are expecting this team to make a push for the Super Bowl. And that's a heavy weight to bear. I have two guys that kind of fit into a similar category of more so legacy and career arc than anything else. Both these guys have gotten their money.
Okay.
Both these guys have established themselves to be good quarterbacks in this league. But I think there's pressure to win, and you have to win to establish that legacy and to prove that the teams that, committed to you were correct in doing so. First one of that being Dak. I think Dak it's not enough to just, win the division with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
You have to win playoff games and you have to make a push. This is a team that has 2 playoff wins in 20 years. They really, really need to move the needle over, it's really kind of like in that Steelers realm of you guys have had good teams, but what if you had to show for it? You just, the success hasn't been there. Dak is a guy that got paid big money and is a good quarterback. That's not going to hurt. He's not going to not be a good quarterback. He'll always be known as that. And he would have, he would go somewhere else if for whatever reason the Cowboys, moved off of him. But in terms of his legacy and his, footing in the NFL as a good starter that, provided for his team and produced, you got to do more than just put up some nice stats. You got to win some games. And then the other guy for me is Derek Carr. And the biggest thing with Derek Carr is that he hasn't had as much help over his career, but now he's got Devontae Adams and Darren Waller is a stud, and Hunter Renfrow just got his payday, and you have a pretty good run game, and now you have an offensive mastermind, that is your head coach. It's a tough division. I'll give him that. He doesn't have as easy of a road as Dak does, but Derek Carr needs to start winning some playoff games because he's been in the league for a while now. He's been really good, but just doesn't have that success. It's kind of akin to Kirk Cousins. It's you're a good quarterback, but what have you done? You're putting up good stats and you're, leading your team down. I think Derek Carr's a great quarterback. Honestly, I think he's a top, 13 or whatever. I think I should put him number 9 in the league. I think he's really good. But you got to win games. And that's the pressure these two guys face.
Yeah. So I'll respond to that. I mean, I made my case for Derek Carr why there's not pressure. And I think it's because these two guys are great talking points for this discussion. And again, the reason I didn't include them on this list, I agree there is pressure. Don't get me wrong. There's pressure on every.
There's elements of pressure across. Yeah,
there's pressure on every single player in the NFL, every single coach, every single organization. But I personally think that Dak has some security, and Derek has some security because of the contracts. And I do think that Derek, if things don't go great this year, they will have excuses that are built in, right? New coach, adding new pieces, Devontae Adams, so we feel really good going into year 2 of this, right? I can see the excuses at the end of the year when they miss the playoffs barely in a tough division. He throws a bad pick or they, missed a little time. And it's well, guys, no. We've had him in the system for a year. I know he had to learn a whole new offense. You know what I mean? I can make.
I hear you, but they just made the playoffs. If they take a step back with adding Devontae Adams and a new head coach, To me,
No.
you got to go the other way. You got to make the playoffs again.
I agree. There's pressure, but I'm saying is why is he not higher on my list? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And
those
and like I said,
things.
like this is a legacy thing, not a you're not going to keep your job type of thing. Like,
Great.
He's going to his
Agreed.
job is intact. The money's there. But.
I agree more with Dak. Legacy is really at stake here. I mean, he has now been with Mike McCarthy. They got rid of Amari Cooper. So that means there's more pressure on you to perform, to make CeeDee Lamb the number one, to make Gallup the true number two. You know, he has a defense now that no one can sleep on anymore. That Dallas defense came out of nowhere last year. We did not expect Micah Parsons to be that good. We did not expect Diggs to be that good. So now those guys, you know, that's expected. And so Dak's even more so got to rise to that occasion. And you're right, the NFC is weak. It is weak. And so I think that adds on to the pressure. The Dallas Cowboys were a 12-win team last year in an NFC that we all agree got worse. You got to have some playoff success. You got to have a playoff win. And I just don't know if it's there. So I agree there's pressure on Dak, and it's legacy pressure. Absolutely. The only other person that I would say, to me, there's pressure on, it's not losing job, and it's not necessarily legacy, but it's perceived, how we perceive them and how we will talk about them in a calendar year from now, is Trevor Lawrence. He's the leader of the rookies in that way. Listen, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, you can make the same argument I'm about to make for Trevor Lawrence for all of them, right? They're all rookie, second-year quarterbacks now. But Trevor being the can't-miss Andrew Luck, John Elway, Peyton Manning prospect, and being number one overall, there's more of it. So I will make this argument, but just know as I'm making it, you can plug and play this if I was talking about Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, or Trey Lance, and Mac Jones as well. So just know that as I make this argument for Trevor Lawrence. And that is the fact that there's always that sophomore slump to worry about. And for guys, none of these rookies had outstanding years, and none of them had years that blew any of us away. And none of them we would feel like are on that trajectory of a Justin Herbert like the year before. A year ago, we were talking about Justin Herbert like, holy crap. And even so, we were talking about Joe Burrow like, holy crap, and I hope he's healthy because holy crap, he was really good. None of the rookies had that. They did not. Even Mac Jones, who won the most games and at times looked the best of them, had the Buffalo game where it's like, okay, clearly the smartest coach in NFL history is showing us he doesn't trust his quarterback to throw the football at all. And so none of them had those moments that the previous rookie class did. So for Trevor as the leader of that, as the can't miss prospect, as the Andrew Luck, as I mentioned, that type of talked in that way, this is a huge year. And again, they invested in a new coach and in new weapons for him. They're in a division, a conference that's tough, but a division that is weaker.
Yeah.
You have got to find a way to show me the wow moments, the improvements, okay, that's Trevor Lawrence that we expected to be in the NFL. I need Trevor Lawrence to not necessarily win more games, right? Which is hard because they were the number one overall pick. They were bad. I'd like to see them win more games, but I need to see Trevor Lawrence be the reason. It's like, oh, well, they're not. The reason they're not winning games, it ain't Trevor Lawrence's fault. That's what every second-year – if you're a fan of a team that's a second-year quarterback, the Niners, the Bears, the Jets, the Jaguars, the Patriots, the most important thing – maybe not the Patriots in this sense, but the most important thing that we all are sitting here saying to ourselves is that we have to know a calendar year from now, is he or is he not the guy? Are we building around him or are we not? And that is the most important question, and even more so for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, because being the number one overall pick and being the can't-miss prospect, it comes with extra pressure in that way.
Yeah, no, That's a really good point. I was close to putting Trevor Lawrence on this list, and for those very reasons. So I don't need to say too much more on that. But I definitely agree. I would say they probably do need to win games because if you are a good enough quarterback, the
Yeah.
wins, like even in the worst situation, you're gonna win more than like 2 games. So yeah, hopefully they can pull out like 5 or 6 and show some serious progress there. Excuse me. I only had 2 other guys here, Mark, that are in similar situations. And again, it's not necessarily a legacy thing, and it's not necessarily a last chance for your career type of thing. It's somewhere in the middle, and this is Kyler Murray and Lamar, because I think both of
Contracts.
them are in similar situations. They're both very talented, super good. They're playing for these contracts, so this is obviously without them having contracts currently, which might end before the season starts. They may get signed to multi-year deals and huge deals, and then there's less pressure in that regard. But they both have had injury concerns, and there have been limitations in their game that, while it hasn't impeded them from winning football games, it has been a concern in terms of long-term viability. And so Kyler's, had these, questions about leadership, and he's kind of a loner, and how long is sustainable is that? Lamar has had, yes, he's thrown better, but does he have the arm to sustain a 10-12 year NFL career at the position?
Yeah.
These are things that need to be answered sooner rather than later. And while Lamar has had more success in terms of getting to the postseason, they haven't won the games that they need to be winning. So this year they both need to make the postseason, and they both need to have a good game in the playoffs, and at least if they don't win, if it's because of whatever, you got Mahomes, you're not going to rake you over the coals for that. Or if Kyler runs into the Rams and they just they dominate their defense, so be it. But they need to play well. Kyler in the playoffs, they're left so much to be desired, right? And there's been a lot of speculation about him trying to play for that contract, and so to not get lit up on the field. So they have to answer some of these questions, and that's why I think there's lukewarm heat on these guys. But that's why I put them further down this list, because there's pressure. It's a different feel kind of pressure for these guys.
It is a different feel, because if they were both on the open market, they would have jobs instantly. So it's not, but the pressure is that this year will depend on what kind of jobs would be available to them and staying with their current jobs. I think
just where it goes from here, because if Lamar then ends up in, Carolina, while I think that'd be great, say they lose a couple pieces and stuff, like who's to say that his chance at winning is ever going to be as good as with Baltimore?
It won't.
And then Kyler, is your chance going to be ever as good as this dominant, receiving core that you have, and things like that? So
I agree. I think those are great final pieces. I'll say for both of them, they also are just so they're so unique. They're so unique, but they're so similar and so different. And I think
I know it's
Lamar.
really
Lamar, it's like Lamar. It's fascinating because from everything that I've read and I've heard, there is the contract like offer, and there is like it's not disrespectful, and it is huge money.
Yeah,
but Lamar,
it's almost like he's just saying I need to feel like I've earned it.
Yes, and it's like I need to play this year on my 5th year, and it's like, dude, he's just his own character, and he represents himself. He doesn't have an agent. Where Kyler, it's the exact opposite. It's pay me before I get hurt. I ain't going on the field until I get my money, and when I get my money, no, trust me, I'll be all in. Trust me, I'll be all in. Lamar, it's like he's so all in, he doesn't even feel like he deserves the money, and it's just so different. I do think that Lamar Jackson, if there is a hang up in the contract, and Lamar could maybe feel disrespected by this, and I'm not sure. And again, this is all speculation. I don't know for sure. I'd imagine one of the hangups will be the years. Allen and Mahomes got long-term deals. If I'm the Ravens, I want to pay Lamar Jackson 130, 140 guaranteed, but I want to pay it for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, I want to make you the highest paid annually by like a ton, but I want it to only be for 3 years. And if I'm Lamar, don't be disrespected by that, because Lamar, first off, that's generational, life-changing money. It's going to be 150 guaranteed or whatever it will be, because it'll be top of the market what the others guys were getting. That you get to put in your bank account and no one could ever take it from you. And not only that, if you play to the level that you're capable of playing and you keep on that track, there's no reason why they wouldn't then extend you in that third year or after year 2 of that deal. You know what I mean? Like, it may mean you have to negotiate again, and I'm sure he hates that. But what did I say with Baker Mayfield? Sometimes you just – a year ago, Baker Mayfield had an offer on the table of it was like 3 years, $100 million. And he scoffed at that, thinking that he could do better. What he talked about, like with Le'Veon Bell. And sometimes I just wish some of these athletes had someone better in their corner to just tell them, like, I know you're feeling maybe disrespected by that because of so-and-so, and you're a competitive, fiery guy, but don't be dumb. Like this, the NFL, things change so quickly. It changed so quickly. And for like Lamar, I feel like I just worry that it's one of those things, there is pressure, but to me, it's almost, I fear for him, because we see with guys who are these physical freaks that don't get them. Cam got his money. I mean, Cam had that huge $130 million deal. You know what I mean? Like, he got that big paycheck. Kyler, to his own credit, as annoying as it is, and I think it's, kind of whiny-ish, and he goes about it in a way that I don't personally like. And I don't like Kyler nearly as much as I like Lamar as a player and as a person from everything you've gathered. I do give him credit. I think he's being smart about it. He's like, I'm not bleeping doing it. I need to see some real guaranteed money before I go back out there. And I think technically, I wish Lamar would have a little bit more of that spine to be like, all right, this is it. I need this. Let's do it, and let's go, and let's play. And I just don't know if that's in him or in the negotiations, and I worry it could screw himself. Kyler's going to get his money. Kyler's not going to get screwed. Kyler will get his big deal and have his money. With Lamar, I worry he might play this year on that 5th-year option without the deal, and you risk it every time you step on the field. Talk to Alex Smith. Talk to Joe Theismann. You risk it every time you step on the field. Yeah.
And, you want to find that middle ground. You don't want to be defiant and then end up settling for less.
Absolutely.
And you also don't want to do, like the Scottie Pippen route and just, pounce on the first, sign of, a couple million, but could have made, 15 times that,
No one's going to get Scottie Pippen ever again.
No, I know.
But I get it's a decent analogy, but I do think, stop worrying about the years. Like, I know Josh got his 8-year, Patrick got his 10-year. Like, don't worry about the years. Get that guaranteed money.
Because if you're going to end up playing 8 years, you'll end up playing 8 years. Like,
yes.
That's going to happen regardless. So,
and Baker would kill.
Because if Josh Allen gets hurt in 2 years, he's not playing 8 years either.
Yeah, he's not playing 8 years either. And the money, the guaranteed money is going to be the same as your guaranteed money for your 3 or 4 year deal.
Right.
And Baker would literally kill for a 3-year, $100 million deal right now, $33 million a year. But that was disrespectful, and everyone else is getting 6 years or more. I want that commitment. Don't be. I know. It can be frustrating.
You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Guys make. I think it just goes to show you how quickly things can happen in a year. And I'm glad that's why we did this show today, because we're talking about it. And in a year from now, there's going to be 1 or 2 of the guys that we talked about today who are in the exact same bad scenario, the worst case scenario we talked about, and some of the guys who are in the best case scenario we talked about. Right. And it's going to happen because it happens every single year. And with Baker Mayfield, he's the latest example of the negative of that. And so it's going to be very interesting.
It will be. That's, like every NFL season, it will not be void of storylines, and we'll have plenty of those at the quarterback position going into this year.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mark, before we close out the show here?
I have one thing that's really interesting. CBS Sports is they've been pushing out a bunch of this stuff on their social media. In the Super Bowl era, they have like best franchise win percentage in the Super Bowl era.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
And you see that, and like most playoff wins in the Super Bowl era.
The Cowboys thing's hilarious because they
is.
won like 33 of those in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
It just goes, but that's why and that were the ones I want to talk about in the Super Bowl era. So what is it going to be? Super Bowl 57 this year?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking
1960. So
50s.
Yeah.
So no, 40, 60. We're not in Super Bowl.
1960. When was the first Super Bowl? That's bad.
Yeah, I know. That is terrible of us. We're young.
Super Bowl I was in 1967. Okay, yeah.
So Super Bowl 66 we're coming up this year. 56.
No, 56. Yeah.
56. So
actually, it's Super Bowl 57. I'm pretty
57 because it's one. One. So I said 57. So in 57 years, the Dallas Cowboys have 35 playoff wins, but they've only had 2 in the last. So if you ever wonder why people are like America's team's so annoying, they legit were the Patriots. I mean, like they dominated for the first 30 years of the Super Bowl era. They were very, very dominant. You basically average 10 playoff wins a decade, 1 a year with multiple Super Bowl runs. Including capping off with their epic 90s, early 90s runs. And, it just goes to show you of all the teams that have lasted a long time, like the long time franchises too, I need to stop predicting the Bears will ever will win playoff games. I mean, it's so embarrassing.
Honestly, 10 surprised the hell out of me. They've really only won 10
playoff games in the Super Bowl era.
And that includes 2 making the Super Bowl, 2 runs of making the Super Bowl, which requires 3 wins at least.
They've really only had 2 years in the Super Bowl era that were good. 2 legitimate years. And that is going to show you why the double doink, like that shit hurts. Because that's why it's like, that's your chance when you root for a bad franchise. I mean, because even like teams like the Giants, the football team, the Dolphins, who have not been good recently, like in the last 15, 20 years. The Giants is more like the last 10 years, but like the Giants, 20 wins in the Super Bowl era. The football team, 20 wins in the Super Bowl era. Multiple Super Bowl championships. The Raiders, 25 wins in the Super Bowl era. The Bears are that special kind of bad. The Bengals, longtime franchise too, 8 wins. The Browns, 7 wins. And the Lions. Like the Bears and the Lions 1 win. Cardinals have been around since the Super Bowl era as well, right?
1 playoff win, dude. Like 1 playoff win.
The
in your entire franchise of anyone that's been alive to have been a fan.
And Saints fans need to worry because the Saints fans only have 10, and that's all recent success with Drew Brees. Yeah. So the Saints, the Bears, the Lions, the Browns, the Bengals fans, the Cardinals fans, we have the most, we are rooting for basically limp dick dead franchises. I mean, that's what you root for. There's a dead franchise. The Panthers 9 wins, but they've been since 92.
96. So
96.
It's even less than that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? The Jaguars 7, but since the mid 90s, and the Texans 4, but since 2002, even the Vikings 21 wins. I know they'd never made a Super Bowl. They never won, but it's bad, man. It hurts. I saw that. My first 2 thoughts were, man, the Cowboys were so good for so many years. They were the Patriots of the first 30 years of the Super Bowl era. And now they are the Lions of the Super Bowl era. They're in such a swing. And the Patriots are the opposite. They were terrible for the first 30 years of the Super Bowl era. And they're now the Cowboys of and the Bears have just been so bad for so long. Granted, but the Bears have been, when they do the win percentage, tied for 18.
By the way, 1995 was the Panthers' first season. I didn't want to catch hell.
Yeah. So the Bears, as far as win percentage goes, since the Super Bowl started, the Bears have been a better winning franchise as far as regular season than half the league. So but again, that's even why the lack of playoff success, even more painful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is crazy to think about. It really is. Just the ebbs and flows too of a lot of those teams where chunks of eras are where they dominated. Even the Steelers, I would say probably about 20 of those wins came in the 70s, and That's it.
The Steelers, like a mid-90s, a little bit. The Steelers, to me, and the Niners are the two teams that I would argue have had the longest kind of sustained success.
Yeah, because they've been solid. They've never been in the absolute gutter outside of the Packers, small pockets.
The Packers would be that next team. So because remember the Patriots 36 wins. That's all I think 30 of them or 29 of those playoff wins are Brady. The Patriots were garbage the first 30 years of the Super Bowl era. The Cowboys have been garbage the last 30 years of the Super Bowl era, or 25 plus years. So they have been talking about zero consistency, but the Steelers, the Niners, and the Packers are the most consistent. As far as NFL franchises in the Super Bowl era. That's why I think you'd argue the Packers are historically, and I hate to say this, the most successful NFL team historically, because they are second to only the Bears pre-Super Bowl era as far as dominance.
For championships.
Pre-Super Bowl era, it's the Bears and they're in their league of their own. But they are the opposite. They are the most inconsistent then, because they're like the Cowboys. They were great, pre-Super Bowl, and since Super Bowl, they're absolute trash. Just trash. It's painful. Even the Titans, but I guess the Titans technically count as the Oilers as well. So I shouldn't say that. The Jets have more wins. The Jets have more playoff wins than the Bears.
I mean, that, Super Bowl III, man.
Well, it goes to show you for Tampa Bay, why franchises like Tampa should do exactly what they're doing. Historically, you have zero historical relevancy. Sell out for certain guys and just make one. Because the Bucks now have 11 wins. The Bucks in literally the Brady era have had how many super playoff wins? 6?
Yeah, probably 5 or 6. Yeah.
That took them from being third place on this list, third from last, to in the above the Bears, the Saints, the Falcons. Fell out.
Just takes one good run and maybe a second year, and then there you go.
Just had to make. We haven't had.
Yeah, we haven't had to end on a depressing note.
We haven't had sorrow for the Bears in a while, and I saw that, and I just I cried.
Just to make you feel better, Justin Fields hit a home run at Wrigley. So
hey, it does make me feel better. Again, I have no shame in being I'm pathetic and my franchise is pathetic, and so when we get our few wins, I'm gonna celebrate.
Take them, absolutely, take them for sure.
Oh God.
All right, good stuff. All right, well, we'll be back at it, of course, with more next week. But until then, please follow us on YouTube if you like watching the show, or give us a like there. Hit us up on social media as well. That is us signing off, Mark and Dan, on the Football Lounge. Until next week.